Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. Today we have some thrift store finds that we're going to rekindle and breathe some new life into, starting with this bread box. Now, I don't think this bread box is old. I could be wrong, but it's in really good shape. It almost looks like someone's woodworking project, maybe for school, or I'm not sure. No worries though, let's put our spin on it. So the first thing I do is I get it all cleaned up, some crud cutter, soap and water, go ahead and start to remove any of the hardware just because I figured it's going to be easier to work with. Um, and once I get that taken down, then I take it down in the basement and give it a nice scuff sand because it does have a little bit of shininess to it. I typically like to do minimal sanding inside my craft room, so that's why I take it downstairs to the basement, just so I can keep the dust up here to a minimum. Once I get all the hardware removed, then I'm going to go in and we're going to take our Waverly chalk paint in the color ink, and I'm just going to give this one coat. I don't have a shop, but if I did, I would be spray painting this for sure. So if you do, you go right ahead. Even outside would be nice. But that's okay, spring's coming. Once I get my coat of black down, I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to come in with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Snow White, and I'm going to give this, it's going to end up, I think, being 3 coats. So it was like the end of my bottle, and it was it was thick and sticky, and at first I thought it was just me. Maybe it's my brush, maybe it's, maybe I'm laying it on too thick. I don't know, I had all these excuses in my head until I realized, no, it's definitely the paint, and I had to end up watering it down a little bit for it to work better. So maybe 2 coats becomes 3 coats if it gets overwatered. Maybe. So I do get my first coat on and I let it dry, and then I'm going to go in with a thicker coat, and I'm going to use my little foam brush. It came in a little set of like 5, I think. And I get the paint worked in over the entire thing. And I always like this method just because I feel like it leaves a lot less brush strokes. So even when you do have too many brush strokes, you can either tap them out like I'm doing, or you can go in and give it a light scuff sand after all, or whatever you think is going to be easiest. I'm just making my way around the box and doing the same thing on each side. And then I'm going in with a dry brush in those corners or edges and just pulling out that extra paint. Once I get that dry, I'm going to go in with my little finger sander, and I'm just going to gently do some distressing over the entire piece. I just work my way around, and it's coming back to the black perfectly, really easy. In some spots the wood, which is perfectly fine. And when I'm happy with the distressing, I'll go back in and I'll wipe it down with a damp cloth. And now I'm going to use my redesign stamp in stripes. And we're going to use the grid that came with the stamp. Get that lined up. And then I'm going to go in with my IOD ink and get that inked up. Now I want to add the stripes to the top and to the front, and I wish I would have inked the front first because obviously eyeballing it didn't work well for me. So I do ink this off-centered at first, but we're going to go back and fix it later. Or should I say, I'm going to go back and fix it later. So I go in and I just let this ink dry, or nope, I dry the ink, and then I'm going to go in with my finger sander and I'm going to distress it even more, just so it's not as stark. It takes on a more worn look, and I like that better. So now you can see where it's off-centered. I knew it was off-centered at the top, so I did try to off-center it on the front, but it was still just too bad. So I went ahead and I reattached all of the hardware and put the little magnet back on so that I could go back and fix the front. Now I'm also adding a new knob to this. So after I get the little magnet plate on, the hole wasn't big enough for the new hardware. So I wanted to use this really cute crystal knob. So I just took my drill and it was super easy. I just drilled right through it and was able to get the size that I needed for my new screw. And I go ahead and attach that. So this is me drying the new stripe on the top after I repainted it and you know, re-stamped it, and now I'm going in and distressing it as well. Now that I have it the way that I look and I'm really happy with it, I do go in with some Dixie Belle Best Dang Wax and clear, and I just go ahead and clear the entire thing. You know, with chalk paint, even with your fingernail, if you it mars really easy. So I wanted to put just a little bit of layer of protection on there since I was going to be using it in my living room as a piece of storage. So tell me, what do you think? I have this on my TV stand in my living room, and I think it turned out really great. Inside, I have just put like my remote controls, my candle lighter, my chargers, you know, whatever you want. Now we're going to work on our cookbook holder. So I love the metal on this and the rusted nails, but I'm not excited about the wood per se, the color of the wood. I think it's really dated. So the first thing I'm going to do is the process we did in the beginning, which is again, go ahead and put a coat of black paint on it first. So when we distress back, you're going to see that black and some wood. It's going to look really rich. So I go ahead and I take a teeny tiny brush and of course painstakingly go around all of that metal and then go in and give the rest of it, you know, with a bigger brush, a nice coat. And then I'm going to go in again with our Waverly chalk paint in the color Snow White and again go over, you know, next to the metal first and go around the entire piece. And again with this piece, once it's dry, I'm going to go in with my finger sander and I'm just going to distress back to the black and in some spots to the wood. And when I'm done with the way that it looks, then I go ahead and I clean it up a little bit, get all that dust out of the way. And now I go into Cricut Design Space, or you could go on Google and type in free printable. And I found this on Cricut Design Space and I just printed it with the print then cut, but I just printed it. I didn't cut it. And I printed it on a piece of tissue paper. And I added the little crab because I'm a Maryland girl and I just love to see that. So I'm going to go in with my scissors and then my fussy cutting scissors, and I go ahead and go around and just get as close to all of the edging as I can, just so that when we go in with our Mod Podge, you don't necessarily see the edges of the paper and it's just more like a cohesive piece. So I'm just going to take our matte Mod Podge and go ahead and put a thin layer down just so that I can get the top of our design attached. And then once I get that down, I can go in and I'm just going to add a little bit of Mod Podge, work my piece down, add a little bit more Mod Podge until I get the entire thing attached to the piece. Once I get the design down, I do go over the entire piece with the Mod Podge, just in case there's a little flying food. I don't want it to get stuck or stained. So tell me, what do you think? I think it turned out really great. Now I have this wall hanging, and I thought it was wood at first, but when I got it home, it's definitely like some pressed board with knobs that you can't detach, which I knew, and on the front is like a sticker or a piece of paper. So I took it in the basement and I sanded it down really well. Then I brought it back up and I'm going to take our Waverly chalk paint, just like the other two projects, and I'm going to give this a nice coat. I don't even know if that was part of the process when they made this, that they put that orange paint on there, or if it was painted a second time and done over. Once that paint dried, I do turn it over and paint the back just to give it a nice, finished look. And of course, once that's dry, just like I did with the other two projects, I'm going to go in with our Waverly chalk paint in the color Snow White. Work my way around all the edges and then painstakingly work my way around those knobs before I go in with my bigger brush and be able to go ahead and give that, a couple of coats of paint. Just like with the first two projects, I painted on the first coat, and then with the second coat, I went in and just sponged it on. I had to switch to a smaller one to get around those knobs and try not to get any paint on the knobs. I think I did, I'm just showing that I did have to go in and give this a third coat. And then once it's dry, I go in with my finger sander again and sand this back. I'm sorry if this is kind of repetitive, but this is what I did for each of the pieces. Once I get it distressed the way that I like, then I'm going to take this peat pot and I'm going to cut it in half. And then what I do is I just kind of line it up, make sure it's the right size that I want to use. And then I'm just going to take my chalk paint, my white chalk paint again, and I'm just going to dry brush. And dry brushing is just very minimal paint on your brush so that it's almost dry. And you're just going to layer the paint on there until you're happy with the way that it looks. And once you achieve that, then I'm going to take my Gorilla Glue Super Glue and I'm just going to glue that down to my wall decor. I really hope I'm inspiring you to look at these ugly things at the thrift store, to bring them home and give them new life and what you can do with them. Give me a thumbs up, comment, let me know below if you like what you see. Once I get that glued down, I'm going to take my redesign decor transfers and classic vintage labels, and I've gone through and kind of decided which pieces I think are going to work here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove that first transfer from the carrier sheet and I'm just going to eyeball it and lay it exactly where I want it on the top of the pot. And I'm going to get that pressed down, wiped down, and then I'm going to take the tool that they give you and gently just rub down. It doesn't take any really hard pressure, not with this. If I was working on something soft, it might be different. So I start to peel it back and see that there's still a little bit that's coming up with the transfer sheet. So you just put it back down, give it a harder rub, and then go back in and pull it back up. It's that easy. Then you're just going to turn that over and wipe that down, working out any bubbles, and that's called burnishing. I'm going to go in and do the same thing with my little bee. I'm going to get him rubbed down. I'll pull him up, give him a little burnish, and that's it. Okay, now because I don't want my transfers to seem as stark as they are, I'm just going to go with my my finger sander and a light grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to gently go across the bee and the label and just kind of give that more of a distressed look, a worn look, something that's, looks kind of aged, just the look that I like. And again, once it's done, I'm going to go in with my clear wax and wax the entire piece. A little bit of wax goes a long way, and I'm just going to wipe it on and then take the dry piece of the rag and then wipe it off. So what do you think? I went ahead and I added some string of pearls. You could add any, with this method, attaching the peat pot, you could add any kind of floral you wanted. And then I could hang my keys on here or the little garland. I think it worked out great.